Alhamdulillah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina wa Habibina Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala, amma ba'd. Alhamdulillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from the utaqah, the people freed from the fire these last 10 days, al-'itq min an-nar, inshallah, because this chapter that we've been reading is also known as the Surah Al-Wa'id, which is the Wa'id is the threat, but it's also one of the names for the Yawm Al-Wa'id, is the day of judgment. So, and people don't realize how significant not only life is, but how significant our actions in life are, no matter who we are. And whether we're a ruler or whether we're somebody who's simply cleaning streets, everybody's life is momentous because they were created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and brought here for a purpose. And not only that, but when you look at what it took to bring one human life into existence, which is why the Quran reminds us, actually quoting the Jewish tradition, that to take one life is if that you killed all of humanity. Because when you think about just all the lives that existed before our lives to bring us as individuals, each one of us, into existence, it will boggle the mind just to reflect on it. Of your two parents, and then there's 4, and then there's 8, and 16, and it just goes on and until you've got this massive amount of ancestors, and then they go back to, at a certain point, so they go out like this, but at a certain point they go back to the 2. So we're one inverted pyramid of all these inverted pyramids that go back to the actual pyramid, which is Adam and Eve. So the entire humanity is just this massive pyramid of human beings that have existed from the beginning of time until our time. And so 9 months in the womb, that's a very small portion of what it took to bring you into existence. And so people don't realize the momentousness of life. And that's why to turn it into la'ib, to turn it into activity, playful activity, and play is part of life, but it's the first part of life. You're supposed to get out of it very quickly because children play as work. So that they're actually playing that's why in fitrah, not socially constructed, but in fitrah, most girls, not all girls, because there are tomboys, but most girls like to play with dolls, because they see their mothers taking care of the baby. This is fitrah. So every traditional society has that quality. And so to pervert the fitrah of people and to try to take an anomalous element and make that the norm, it's called centralizing, the peripheral and peripheralizing the central. This is modern demonic theory, where everything's inverted. And that's one of the things that the Prophet ﷺ told us in the latter days, things would be inverted, what our tradition calls qalb al-haqa'iq. It's the inversion of realities. So fitrah suddenly is called a social construct. In other words, it's society that creates these things, not the natural, inherent, principial nature of the human being. And so they pervert human beings. And it creates a lot of confusion, and then you have all this mental illness and people unwell because they're not in nature. Like we are meant to be in nature, and so the more distant we get from our nature, the more unwell we get. And that's why this religion is called Deen al-Fitra, because it brings people back to that principial nature. One of the elements of our nature is to worship. If you study human history, human beings worship. You're going to worship something. If you don't worship Allah, you will worship something else or many things. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ talked about the devotees of clothes. Abd al-Qamisa, the people devoted to clothes. They're worshiping clothes. And their whole life is surrounded about clothes. And then there's people that worship their stomach. So their whole life is around food. And they put their whole life around food. And then there's people, it's all about power. And this is one of the really strange things about the modern period. It's so obsessed with this idea of power, whereas in our tradition, we're more interested in powerlessness because we attribute all power to Allah. Like we are powerless, Allah is all powerful. And so whatever figurative power He has given us, it's from Him. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. It's only through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not inherent to us. So this chapter, which in many ways is Imam Shafi'i famously said, all we really need, he said, if only Surah Al-Asr was revealed, lakafat. The surah would have been sufficed for us. Just Surah Al-Asr would have sufficed for humanity. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. We're at loss by time because every moment that occurs can never be got back. You can't get it back. And that's why this modern world that puts you on hold, it's so sinister because they don't let you talk to a human being so that you can solve your problem. They put you on hold and then they take that time from you. And even worse, to add insult to injury, they'll put music on. This is how sick this culture is. It's so unwell. And that's why everybody's unhinged. Because I think about the amount of practice that your average Muslim does. I'm talking about average Muslims, not the sabiqun al-awwalun, not those people. I'm talking about an average Muslim who's just a dedicated Muslim. 5 prayers a day, praying on time, because that's a committed Muslim. You pray on time. 5 prayers a day, some dhikr outside of that, some recitation of Quran, even if it's Yasin and Waqi'ah and Mulk every day. There's some regular practice of Quran. I'm talking about baseline. And then the nafilah prayers, at least 3 shafa' and witr, and then 2 before Fajr, Subh, and then 2 after Maghrib. At least that. And yet, despite that, if you do that baseline, you will find yourself incredibly frustrated. And include in that also that you have a worldview that tells us how important patience is. Like your Lord tells you to be patient. So all those things. So what about all these people that don't have any of that? And then you wonder why people shoot up schools and why people completely lose it and do all these horrible things, because they're so unwell and they have no medicine.